Thank you for watching this video about the application of trig functions. Here we're going to work through two word problems that make us apply trig functions in various ways. The first question we're going to look at is about this plane here. The plane has an angle of depression of 15 degrees. So what does that mean? What it means is that you have a plane some point way up there, and the runway is down here somewhere. And this right here, so this would be the ground down here, right? And here's the plane. We'll mark that as point P, right? Okay. That's point P. What does that angle of depression mean? Well, angle of depression means this right here is 15 degrees, which means that this has to be 75 degrees, right? The other thing we're told is the distance to the runway is 1,800 feet, which means you're talking about this piece right here. The distance from plane to a runway is 1,800 feet, so it's talking about that diagonal distance there. But really what they've done here is set up a right triangle with a hypotenuse of 1,800 and a angle of 75 degrees. So when we start looking for the different components here, we're going to be using those two pieces to build everything off of. So the first question is, what is the altitude of the plane? Well, that's asking about this value right here, y. The second question is, how far away from the runway is the plane? You might be tempted to say it's 1,800, but here the implied idea here is it's the horizontal distance, in which case this is actually x. You're going from there to right there. Okay, so how do we find that? How do we find that distance from there to there and there to there, wherever that is, right? So I'm going to erase a little bit this stuff right here so we have a little bit of space to work. And I just nabbed off the tip of that corner, but that's okay. So the first one I'm going to go after is that first value, which is what is the altitude of the plane? So that's the y coordinate. So 75 degrees is the angle we're looking from. Y is the value that we want. 1,800 is the value we know. Which trig function involves those two pieces? That's hypotenuse and the adjacent side. Which trig function is hypotenuse and adjacent? And that's cosine. So cosine of 75 degrees is equal to y over 1,800. Right? So now as you multiply both sides by 1,800, this is going pretty quick, gives us cosine of 75 degrees for my y value. So then we just get our calculator out, and we do 1,800 times cosine of 75 degrees. And that is 465 degrees, or probably not degrees, I'm sorry, 465.87 feet. Now this isn't equal, this is approximately, right? It's approximately the value of y, so it's approximately the distance. Okay, now we need to find the second question is how far away is the runway? So that'd be the x-coordinate. So how do we find that x-coordinate? So that'd be the opposite side in the hypotenuse. Which trig function is that? Sine. So sine of 75 degrees is equal to x over 1,800. Multiply both sides by 1,800. You end up with x is equal to 1,800 sine of 75 degrees. Right, and that works out to be 1738.66 feet. Now, I hope some of you caught this, but I wrote something wrong there. Right here. Right? It should be approximately. Because this is an approximation, but both in case these are approximate values. They're pretty close. In most applications, they'd be just fine. But we do need to make sure that we are aware that they are approximation, which is why I'm putting the squiggly marks instead of the equal marks. Okay. So how about another one? So this is angle depression. Angle depression, and one of the big things to recap real quick to remind you of is when you look at angle depression, you're just saying, I'm going to draw a horizontal line. The distance down is my angle of depression. So here in this case, it was 15 degrees was the angle down. So I'm looking straight out horizontally and I look down 15 degrees. That gives me how far that downward look was. Okay, it doesn't tell me how far the angle is between the ground and the object. It tells me how far my horizontal view is from the object I'm looking at. All right. Now let's compare that against this one. This is the angle of elevation. Right there it says angle of elevation, right? So Doug and Alicia here see a red bird. Now, they must be bird watchers, right? And they see it on a nearby pole. All right, and they're going to go through. And these must be some boring people, and all they have to do with their time is figure out how high birds are up on poles, right? So anyway, let's draw this out though. Let's forget that these are boring people. Draw this out. I'm just going to create the triangle here. Now, where's this 35 degrees go? Well, 35 degrees means you look horizontally, just like with the angle of depression, but it's kind of the opposite of looking downward from your horizontal. You're looking upward from your horizontal. That means that 35 degrees is right there. And then they tell us that the distance to the pole is 300 feet. So that's this right here, isn't it? And again, we would assume the pole is at a right angle to the ground. So there we go, all right? Now, what do we do with it from there? Well, here they're asking, how high is the bird? That's asking for this value right here, y. How far are Doug and Alicia from the bird? Now, some of you may be tempted to say, well, that's 300. Nope. We're looking for distance from up there, the bird, down here to the to where they are standing, and we're looking for that value, and we'll call that h, because it's going to be the hypotenuse of that triangle, right? So now, how do we find y? Well, we're going to find y by using one of our trig functions. So sine of 35 degrees is equal to y over 300. That's what we're going to want to do. Which trig function is that? That's tangent, because that's the opposite side over the adjacent side. Tangent of 35 degrees equals y over 300. Let's multiply both sides by 300. You get tangent 35 right there. All right, you plug that into your calculator, just like you right there. Make sure you're in 3 mode. So if you're not getting the same values I did on the last page, go back and check, make sure you got your calculator in the right mode. So I get 210.06 feet. It's approximately my value of y. Again, it's approximate because we don't know the exact value because this is a decimal. Tangent 35 degrees is always going to give us a decimal. So we're always going to be forced to deal with the decimal. Right? Second part of this is how far are they from the bird? Well, in this case, we're looking for that hypotenuse. So some trig function of 35 degrees is equal to something dealing with h and 300. Well, if I do 300 over h, that is adjacent over hypotenuse, and that's cosine. So I can do cosine of 35 degrees equals 300 over h. Right? Now, I want to solve for h. So I'd multiply both sides by h. And I end up with h times cosine of 35 degrees equals 300. And then I'd divide by cosine of 35 degrees. So h is equal to 300 over cosine of 35 degrees. And you get out your calculator and you figure out this is approximately 366.23 feet. All right, so there you go. There's 2 word problems that we essentially worked 4 different trig problems and working through these 2 questions, which is why I like these 2. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll try to read through those as best and often as I can to answer those as I can. Thank you very much.